Well, it looks like you can actually bet this line. Georgia is a 3-point favorite over Alabama. Alabama's not even qualified for the SEC championship game yet. And you actually can bet this line over at Circus Sports. So everybody's going to start out somewhere around Georgia being a field goal favorite over the Tide, and we'll see where the line moves around. We still got 2 weeks before that game starts. It's always interesting seeing the original lines. Will this move at all? It will move based on Alabama more than Georgia because Alabama has two legit games. Georgia can't really say that, but overall reactions to this being an actual betting line that's out there. I mean, I think it's about right. I mean, it might be slightly low. And what you're going to see is the betting public has always been real big on Alabama. The other team they're real big on, there's two, Georgia and Ohio State. So I think right now, though, that Georgia is the like about 56% chance, 56, 57, 58% chance of winning the national championship according to the odds as it relates to percentages from those odds. That's pretty high. And, gambling folks are not going to knock that down low in one game, particularly on a neutral site field in the state that the school plays in. I mean, Atlanta is obviously in Georgia. It's not so far from Alabama by any stretch of the means, by any stretch of the imagination. But you know, I think the curious thing here is how does Alabama play against Arkansas? And then a week after that, how do they play against Alabama? But the fact that you can actually get this line right now shows me that what we suspected all along is what's going to be the case, which is that Alabama, for the first time, I'm going to look it up right now as we go, but Alabama, for the first time, I think in an extremely long period of time, is going to be the underdog, and the underdog not by just a point, by what would be not an insignificant number at three. It doesn't mean that Georgia is guaranteed to win the game. No, what it does is it just shows that um, they should win the game. I mean, not that they certainly will, but that they should win the game. Alabama has not been in Nick's time at Alabama. They have been the dog a few times, not a lot. Okay, now Nick's time. Let's just call it sort of modern Alabama, and that would really start for me in 2008. So they were a dog to Clemson. I was at that game. They kicked Clemson's teeth in that night, 34-10. They were 4.5 point dog that game. They beat Georgia by 11. They were 6.5 point dog that night. They were a 10-point dog to the Gators and lost by 11 in 2008 in the SEC championship game. In 2009, a year later, one versus two, they were a 5-point dog. They really missed that one, Las Vegas. They were a 5-point dog, 32-13. Um, they won that game going away, made Tim Tebow cry. And then 2015, which really is in the stretch, they were a 1-point dog to Georgia in Athens. That was that made no sense to me that day. But when you look back, in Nick's time at Alabama, they've been underdog 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, which is an amazing, accomplishment in many ways. Now, they lost some of those games. Don't get me wrong. I continue to look at the screen. I mean, they lost to Florida at one time. They lost to Auburn on the road. They lost to LSU. They drilled Tennessee. So that first season for Nick and company was really up and down. Now before that, they had been dogs plenty of times. I mean, they were an underdog to Georgia in 03. That was a beating that Georgia put on them that day in Sanford Stadium. And I think for this year's game, I think that's about right. I think Georgia's the team that should win. They're coming in as the favorite. 3 points doesn't give you a ton of leeway statistically. I mean, that's not much. And listen, you want to talk in the comments about how just look, can you just relax that? I don't need all that. Everybody knows what I'm saying here. It doesn't guarantee anything. But if you're a 3-point favorite, you're somewhere around 58%, something like that percent chance to win, which means about 58% of the time teams that are 3-point favorites uh, win the game. If you go up to 4, it goes a little bit higher. You get over 60%, kind of somewhere around 62%. That's more comfortable. But like, when Alabama and Georgia played in the 17 game, the national championship game, Alabama was, I think, a 4-point favorite or 4.5. It wasn't a ton that day, or that night, I should say. But uh, this game's not a toss-up. I mean, it's close to a toss-up. A toss-up would be 1 point. That would be a toss-up. This game is very narrowly Georgia in favor to win the game, and people are going to have to wrap their heads around it. That's going to be very new for a lot of people that are watching this program, paying attention to college sports, generally speaking. I mean, Alabama has been as good as anyone in sports, perhaps. I don't even know if this is true. Perhaps outside of the Patriots, Alabama was a 3-point favorite in that game, in the national championship game. So they hung on to win. I mean, that game was tight. I mean, the better team. I don't know if the better team won, but they did win the national championship by that one play. I mean, if I were Kirby Smart, I would know exactly who the backup quarterback is for Alabama, and I'd have the plan ready because that's been that's been their Achilles heel, generally speaking, over these last however many years at Georgia. But the backup quarterback coming and getting you twice. I mean, that's hard to understand. And backups in back-to-back years, different guys. The same two guys, but in different scenarios. Tua Tagovailoa he wanted zero to do with Georgia in 2018. That was combination of him being hurt, combination of the way that Georgia was getting after him. I mean, in both those games, in 17 and 18, and it's not like Tua lit them up. He didn't. He hit a really important play, and it's going to live on in history. I mean, that play for the national championship in 2017, that is as consequential. I mean, it decided the national championship. How many plays have determined the national championship? Just going backwards, I'm thinking over the Clemson Bama game in 16, Georgia Alabama in 17, 18 blowout, 19 blowout, 20 blowout, 15, 14, I don't recall. I mean, there was no really one play. The one play in 12 was when Georgia didn't score in the SEC championship game. 11, that was a solid win, and I would last play of the game for Auburn in 10, kicking a field goal. Um, you just keep going back, and I don't know how many. Was that the only overtime game in national championship history? It might be. Um, in national championship history, you know what I mean, from I guess the BCS on. But Miami Ohio State was an overtime game, right? Um, I think it to me is as close to Texas SC in 2005 as it gets. Um, you don't have the built-up narrative of the two teams having great seasons the year before. You don't have SC being the rabbit. I mean, I don't know who the rabbit is here in terms of somebody getting chased down, like the way Texas chased down SC. But that was a monumental game. When Alabama and Georgia play, and this going back to like the 60s, the games are often just great games. 80, it was 85 in Birmingham, Alabama winning that game late. 1990 with Georgia winning that game on the last play of the game with an interception. 2007, that was epic. 2012, 2017, 2018. I mean, They don't play a lot, Georgia and Alabama. 2000, or it was 1995. Was it 95 or 94? I can't remember when Georgia lost on the last on a field goal. It must have been 94. Um, it just the two teams don't play a lot, but when they do, they really can be classics. That flea flicker in the 60s. So and then you've had some really lopsided affairs between Alabama and Georgia. Obviously, 2008, that was very lopsided towards Georgia. 2003, lopsided towards the Dogs. I forgot to mention the 2002 game, which was an epic fight between two really good teams, and Georgia was the better team that day. I mean, they were the better team the whole day, and just got an avalanche put on them in the fourth quarter, and came back to win the game somehow with some great defense and Billy Bennett's nerves of steel. I saw Billy Bennett a couple of weeks ago with Brandon Coutu, and those guys have dumped more points at Georgia about anybody, any duo in history. But Billy's nerves that day were just, I mean, he knocked through a game winner that they had to have, as it turns out, against Alabama. If they don't win that game, they don't win the SEC. They don't win the East. That 2002 team, man, they were living on the edge the whole time. But this team is not, and that's probably why they're favored against Alabama. A 3-point favorite. We'll just see how it goes. We can't know for sure um, how that line will move. I would not be shocked to see it go to 4. I would not be shocked to see it go to 2. And it's just where it's at. I do think the movement will depend a little bit on what happens with Alabama. We don't even have the tech line yet. That thing's going to be probably close to 30, maybe 20, anywhere from 25 to 30 points, which is an amazing number. It could be. I mean, it could be higher than 30, maybe. I don't know if my voice can go higher, but that line could, and we'll just see. But you tell me what you think. Do you think that 30? Excuse me. Do you think that 3 is about right for Georgia and Alabama? Alabama's not been an underdog except once in the last 10 years. It's actually about 12 years, and that was to Georgia in Athens as a 1-point dog. They started that week as a favorite. Well, they're probably going to be the underdog in this one, going to Atlanta. If they can get there, we'll see you over the website, dogpost.com.